think about sort of why Latinos don't turn out to vote, there's a number of potential explanations here. And a lot of these are national in scope. First, the Latino electorate is younger. A lot of the growth in the electorate of the potential number of voters is really coming from young Latinos coming of age. So they're first-time voters. They're turning out to vote for the first time. And in 2020, we had about 3 million new Latino eligible voters, that is people who had turned 18 since 2016. That's a lot of folks, and that's a lot of folks who need to figure out where to register and where to go vote for the first time. And they're also starting their lives. They're in college, or they're starting a new job or a family. So youth is a big part of the story here for Latino voter turnout, and why it may not be as high as it is for some other groups. The second part of this, though, is where Latinos live. And here, this is where Connecticut comes in and plays a role. In many states, Latinos are concentrated in places where battleground states are just not battleground states. So, for example, California, which has about a third of all potential Latino voters, hasn't been a battleground state in recent election cycles. Same thing for Texas, which has another 25% or so of Latino eligible voters, and together they're almost half of the nation's Hispanic electorate. Connecticut has also not been a battleground state in recent years. It's a state that's leaned blue, and so you find that candidates will focus on places where there is the possibility that they might flip that state or do well in a state that's contested, and those are states like Pennsylvania, states like Michigan, which have growing Hispanic populations, but in those states, the Hispanic population is oftentimes less than 5% of all potential voters. The one big exception is Florida, and Florida is the state where, of course, Latino voters are both unique, diverse, and different, but also a significant presence, accounting for about 23% of the state's registered voter population. Puerto Ricans have one of the higher voter turnout rates generally at the national level compared to other Hispanic origin groups. Cubans tend to have the highest, for example. Mexicans, Dominicans, Salvadorans tend to have the lowest. And this is people who are both born in the United States of those heritages, but also those who are naturalized U.S. citizens who have become eligible to vote in the U.S. So when you take a look at Puerto Ricans, though, you do see that those who have moved from the island are in some ways unique compared to those who were born in the United States. Those born in the U.S. tend to lean very heavily towards the Democratic Party and tend not to be religious. Those who are from the island tend to be, might be more likely to lean Republican, though they're still overwhelmingly Democrat, but also they tend to be more religious in the sense that they're more likely to identify as evangelical Christian, and issues like abortion might be important to them in ways that it isn't necessarily to the US-born Puerto Rican population. Also, there do seem to be some distinct stories around the Puerto Rican vote when you take a look at Florida and Central Florida compared to, say, New York, compared to, say, other parts of the country, including Connecticut. That is that in Florida, we do see somewhat more of a split in terms of the partisanship of Puerto Ricans than we do see in, say, a place like the New York area. So there are some distinct stories here around the Puerto Rican experience, and some of those important demographic characteristics may be playing a role for whether or not people get involved. Now, immigrants maybe learn some English, but may not necessarily feel comfortable or proficient enough in English to be able to, for example, go and vote, or even in some of our surveys that we've found, feel confident in being able to go and become and apply for citizenship. So it's interesting that the language is a potential barrier for everything from becoming a US citizen, even if you're eligible to do so, to being able to cast a vote. Over the last 20 years, we have seen, according to Census Bureau data, that immigrant Latinos are, yes, perhaps better in terms of their English proficiency, but their English proficiency hasn't really changed much over those 20 years. So there are many Hispanic immigrants, including those who are US citizens, who aren't necessarily comfortable or will not rate their English speaking abilities very high. that suggests that those are folks who might need some guidance or some assistance when it comes to being able to navigate something like registering to vote, and having documents in Spanish might help those folks. It's important, again, to keep in mind that about a quarter of Latino voters, Latino eligible voters, are people who are naturalized U.S. citizens. Many of them are English proficient, but some of them, in a significant share, may not be.